This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
The Science Notes podcast on OAR FM Dunedin, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. I'm Dave McMorrin. Over the next half hour, I'll be chatting with a graduate science student about their research, their passion for science, and the things that fuel their creativity. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Science Notes. My name's Dave McMorrin, and this time our guest is Panos Lakeas. Hello.
Right. Hello, David. Thanks for having me in.
Thank you for coming along. And what is quite an early part of the day for me to do a pre-record for the radio show, but it's all good. Thank you for coming along. So, Panos is doing a PhD in sports and exercise science at Otago University. But as I can tell from his accent, and maybe you have already, you're not necessarily from Dunedin originally. So maybe we'll start by talking a bit about how your background and how you've ended up at Otago.
Right. So before coming here, I was in Australia, though.
Right.
Stayed there for a couple of years. So I worked there.
Yeah.
Because I have family friends.
So worked in the university or in the real world?
Worked in Sydney, like in a company as a consultant.
Okay.
Like,
yep.
About rehabilitation and stuff. And before that, I came from Europe, from Greece, and then I was an exercise physiologist working with performance and elite athletes. But at some point, I had enough with all these. Like, I was working on that several years, 5-6 years, and I had enough.
Right. So you have a degree in that from back in Greece?
My bachelor is in physical education.
Right.
And in special needs and populations. And then I had a master's in exercise physiology and nutrition and quality of life in the same university.
Right.
University of Athens. And from there on, let's say that I was advised to come in contact with some professors in exercise physiology, and that's how I ended up in Dunedin.
Right. Because
my supervisor in my master's was a colleague with my current supervisor in Canada.
Yep.
So in the meantime, I found the way to come here.
Right. So you come here for the academic connections, not for the weather.
No, the weather I think is fine. I don't know why people complain about the weather. I think
it's colder than Athens, presumably.
No, I'm not so sure about
no?
that.
Oh.
No, I think it's fair. It's a fair winter. Yeah.
So you've been here for how long then? Now?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah, but I find it pretty. I like cycling around and avoid driving.
Yes,
that was one of my main discoveries when I came here. That I should cycle more. Yeah. Since it's not raining that much, I'm telling you. Yeah, it's not raining that much.
True. It's been a bit cold this last few weeks.
Yeah.
It's a bit slippery for cycling, but no, it's not that bad.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've got lots of background then in exercise physiology and that sort of thing, and working with athletes.
Exactly.
And so your PhD work, from the notes that you've sent me, I think kind of implies you're still in that sort of field, but in a very specific sort of part of the research about the physiology.
Exactly. That's a different, let's say, pathway that I choose to follow along with my supervisor, because we were talking for a year on what we could do, because we could do a lot of things, but we should be specific for a PhD level. And my background is more about music and performance.
Right.
So, because I play music as well. So that's quite different story. And I'm talking about the things that happen in your brain, and more specifically, the intercranial pressure that we're working on. And because it's a challenge topic, because it's quite difficult to measure non-invasively and estimate pressures in a rigid scale on healthy adults. Yeah. Because we know already that the gold standard is to put a pressure transducer in your skull, and
In the skull?
In the skull,
Yeah.
yeah. So neurosurgeons and relevant people, they do that in patients that they have issues with pressure regulation.
Maybe before we go on, maybe for the people who've never really thought, I mean, this is a word I think maybe people have heard of but never really thought about. What is intercranial pressure and why does it matter?
Exactly. So intracranial pressure is the pressure that you have in your skull, as any of your organs, especially in the upper body. You have pressure in your thorax, which is called intrathoracic pressure. You have pressure in your abdominal area, intra-abdominal pressure. Yeah. So because the skull is a vault, your head is a vault, it has a pressure itself.
Right.
And is a kind of hydrostatic pressure.
Right. And it's a pressure due to the liquid.
Exactly.
Not gases pressure.
Not particularly gases, but they play a significant role, blood gases in the pressure regulation. But let's say that we have the cerebrospinal fluid that acts like a cushion for the brain, protects it and take the toxins out of it. And as you can imagine, if you increase the pressure in your cerebrospinal fluid, the pressure in your skull is going to increase as well. And then we have the central venous pressure, which plays a significant role in the cerebral pressure regulation. And
so this is like the blood pressure of the main blood vessel?
No, let's say the blood pressure is an input of pressure that's coming from your vessels, from your arteries.
Yep.
And then you have another pressure that comes from the back, from the spinal cord, which is the cerebrospinal pressure. Mm-hmm. And one acts in another in different ways.
Right.
But one main crucial pressure for your intracranial pressure is the cerebrospinal fluid pressure and not the arterial blood pressure. Right. But we're trying to identify relationships between arterial pressure and intracranial pressure as well.
So your intracranial pressure needs to be a certain value. What goes wrong when it's too high or too low?
So let's say that if you're too high pressure, because your skull is rigid, that means that there's no way out to reduce that pressure. There are some mechanisms that they're trying to compensate for those increments. But if we exceed those capacities, then increased intracranial pressure can cause from a headache, from a simple headache, to nausea, until cerebral damage, directly to the different tissues that they're in the brain.
So the increased pressure is just squeezing your brain enough.
Yeah, in a way, and it's because the important thing is because you have a skull which is quite rough. It's not that easy to distend in order to absorb all these. And the capacity of the compensation is quite limited about the pressures as well. So some simple factors that they can affect that in our everyday life, which is my main concern, is intracranial pressure within everyday life activities. The simplest is the change of posture, if we change body positions. Right. So right now we're in upright posture. That means our intracranial pressure is negative or close to zero because all the body fluids are accumulating in our lower part of our body.
Yep.
But if we lay down, the intracranial pressure has its normal values, and it's higher.
Yep.
It's positive and higher, something about 7 to 15 or 12 millimeters of mercury, if you can imagine that your blood pressure has a value of 120. But the real issue starts where your intracranial pressure goes close to your systolic blood pressure values, when it goes close to that 100 millimeters of mercury. So the closer you get, the more damage you have. And after a point, there is no turning back. Scientists relevant to this try to explain it, but after you go up a specific point on intracranial pressure, there's no turning back.
Right.
So, I mean, for permanent damage and death. So, and that is quite evident in traumatic brain injuries when the edema that will be the edema that will be created in your skull will increase the volume of your skull. So the volume and pressure relationship in there will be disturbed. The compensation mechanism, they won't be able to compensate of that increment in volume, so the pressure will increase.
Right.
And then that's why we need to take that out to reduce the edema in order to reduce the pressure and return to homeostasis.
So then you said before that normally the way that you would measure what the pressure normally, is you would go in mechanically with a little machine into your skull.
They drill a hole, literally.
Not you.
Obviously,
you're not doing
not
that.
Me. Yes, yes, not me. And then there's a lot of implications. It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
We have infections and stuff. So yes, and they put the transducer in, especially in traumatic brain injury patients, or in the other hand, on individuals that they have low intracranial pressure. And one implication of that is if you have low intracranial pressure because you have a cerebrospinal fluid leak, for instance.
So you can't maintain the pressure.
You can't maintain the pressure because you're losing fluids from that
else.
area.
Yeah.
And then one of the most outstanding symptoms is you having an orthostatic headache, which is so severe that you need to lay down. Those people, they have intense pain, mostly in their heads, and they need to lay down to regulate that.
Right.
So they have a pressure transducer constantly in their skulls in order to monitor that. So in our case, because we don't do that stuff and we're dealing with healthy adults and we're more interested about how everyday life stuff could affect that, such as posture, exercise, different breathing maneuvers that you use maybe unconsciously. You don't even know that you're using them, but you're doing stuff with your lungs when you're doing things, such as lifting groceries or push something heavy, or pull something heavy as well. We try to understand what's going on there, and then we're using ultrasound. So we're assessing the ultrasound through the eye, because the eye is a unique. I would describe it as a tool in order to see, but it's a unique organ. So it is considered an expansion of the central nervous system out of the skull and the spinal cord, because you have a nerve behind.
Yep.
So that nerve is like a cable of any electronics.
Yep.
And that cable has a sheath, like all the cables. And that sheath that's surrounded and protected has cerebrospinal fluid in it.
Right.
So we're trying to measure how that sheath dilates or shrinks due to changes in pressure in the skull.
Right.
So it's quite an elegant measurement. It's quite difficult, sensitive measurement we're doing.
Is the pressure the same in the sheath of the optic nerve as it is around your brain, or is it different in a relatable way?
Exactly. Let's say that for some reason your cerebrospinal fluid pressure increases, so that will increase the volume and the pressure of the cerebrospinal fluid in your skull probably, and that will make the sheath to increase in diameter, will dilate it.
Yep.
And if for some reason let's say in individuals that they have cerebrospinal fluid leakage, their sheath is shrinked. So in that way, we can say that, that person has increased intracranial pressure, and yes, that person has decreased intracranial pressure. It's pretty clear. But what happens, because it's a spectrum, it's not black and white. So what happens, we try to identify what happens and how that sheath responds in healthy adults in simple stressors like change your posture, like if we change your carbon dioxide levels in your blood. For example, if you hyperventilate, hyperventilate like now, you will feel that you will be dizzy or something off. So we decrease the carbon dioxide concentration, and that will decrease your cerebral blood flow velocity. So less blood will go in your skull, so the pressure will decrease.
Right.
But if we do the opposite, everything will increase. And that's why we're doing that, for instance, in my study, in order to identify the responses of the sheath in different blood flow, cerebral blood, because we measure the cerebral blood flow as well. in order to see those changes in blood flow velocity, which means more blood in the skull, how it will affect in healthy adults, those pressures. And then we go to the next step, and what we're trying to do, we did it already actually, the so-called Valsalva maneuvers, which is you just close your mouth and your nose and you exhale forcefully, but we do that with a pressure manometer. And we asked the participants in different postures as well to keep the pressure, to blow on a tube and keep the pressure in a specific point, and then I was measuring their teeth in order to see if this particular maneuver has, because we know that this maneuver increases the pressure in your brain, but can we record it from the teeth or no? Is that relevant tool to do so? And then the next step is exercise. That's what we're doing right now.
So I suppose there's two things, isn't it, from my understanding of what you're saying. One is to see whether this works, whether there is a way that you can use the ultrasound to actually measure the pressure changes in a way that makes sense. But then also, because it's non-invasive, you can do this with lots of people and then see how repeatable, whether the measurements are the same from person to person or whether there's a range, and understand what the range of values is.
Because we have many data on there. We're not going to invent the wheel at all. But we have a lot of data of that, because it's many decades now that they're using the ultrasound, because it's a pain to drill the skull.
Yeah.
Especially even if
it's hard to get volunteers, right?
Not volunteers. Even if you're after a car accident, let's say, and the doctors, they try to speculate, I cannot see an edema in his brain, but is that person all right? Maybe, because there are strategies to reduce your pressure in the brain. So, but how they're going to tell? And you can't just start drilling holes after a car accident, right? Or after a concussion. What about that? About athletes? No, it's a disaster. You can't do that. So what we're trying to do here is not to invent the wheel, but more about to validate, to see the real abilities of that, and to see how accurate we can record changes in intracranial pressure, but definitely is an estimation. There are equations that you can quantify that, let's say for a given teeth, to know somewhat on what extent your intracranial pressure increased. But that's not the case because all the equations we got are from patients. We don't have mathematical models in healthy adults, so it's not that much reliable at this point. But we can definitely tell that your intracranial pressure increased or even decreased. So we are confident, we are positive, but then you can't quantify and say, yes, that's my intracranial pressure exactly, and that's a miracle, and we can do that with just an ultrasound. It's far more complicated. That's why we measure in cerebral blood flow and other things. And that's why we're using a lot of stressors, and that's why this PhD is quite a broad, a lot of topics there. And at the last study, we may do heat stress and occupational stress as well.
Right. Yep.
On that component, because we know that heat increases the pressure in your skull. We try to understand why that happens, and if intracranial pressure plays a crucial role on even the heat regulation in the skull. So,
and I suppose from a point of view of the health, sports and exercise science thing, which is what the department you're in, as more and more big international sports events get run in higher and higher temperatures, like the Football World Cup in Doha and even the Olympics last year in Paris, understanding how the heat can affect the athletes in these ways, I suppose, is going to be more and more important.
Yeah, more important is heat, and along with it is always dehydration. We can separate those, and dehydration, in instance, athletes had died already many years. It's known if you drink a lot of water and you run a marathon in the heat, probably you're going to die or you're going to have damage in your skull. It doesn't work like that for hyponatremia. So it's, all of those are quite correlated and close to each other. So you can't say I will just investigate heat per se, for instance, in athletes, and then, we're going to see what's going on with the pressure and things like that. You have to consider all of those. And obviously that this PhD won't be enough for that.
Yep.
But it's like fruitful. Let's say it's a fruitful domain. And as you said, the heat and all the countries, they're competing at high levels in high temperatures. Then we have the countries you referred. It's pretty hot there and quite mainstream as well. So all of the athletes, they want to go there to show their capabilities and earn some money. And I don't know what else. But is that enough? So then it's not only, and imagine now an athlete that has the whole time, let's say, contact to his brain or with in rugby, let's say, and then you have the heat as well, and then you have different postures, and then you have all of those stressors.
Because they're lying down and standing up and lying all the time.
And you have all of those stressors that I'm talking about, and I'm investigate those separately, but you will have all of them together in one body. What's going to happen? So, and quite interesting thing that we try to identify that I forgot to mention in regards to exercise and intracranial pressure is like there are some indications that maybe high intensity resistance exercise along with some maneuvers, breathing maneuvers. You may have seen that people shouting or they're pushing themselves and they're trying to overcome a resistance so hard their nose may bleed and stuff. But what I'm trying to bring up is like it has been mentioned from investigators that there may be a correlation between high-intensity resistance exercise, those maneuvers, and in a prolonged manner, and neurodegenerative diseases due to the intermittent increments in intracranial pressure in a session that you do 4 times a week, that you do the whole year, that you do for 20 years. And then suddenly you go down.
So that then suggests long-term study as well as...
Not only, but there are speculations that we should be aware. So what we're trying to identify in the second study is like to try to observe and record if after a specific point of intensity and with a specific type of breathing pattern and maneuver, if your intracranial pressure will increase, and then try to speculate if that will damage your cerebral vessels or no. Because imagine there's a pressure between the arterial wall and the out environment, which is called the transmural pressure. So in the skull, the transmural pressure equals the difference between the pressure that tries to expand the vessel, and there is a pressure, in our case the intracranial pressure, that tries to keep the vessel stable.
Right.
In order not to expand too much.
Yep.
Because you can imagine if a vessel is a bit off and you expand it that much because you're doing weightlifting and your blood pressure goes 350 millimeters of mercury. That's too much. What's going to happen? You have an aneurysm and your vessel may break. So the intracranial pressure may be protective at the very end in order to keep the vessels intact in a way. So reduces the transmural pressure, so the walls getting less pressure, or let's say expanding trends.
Yeah.
But the intracranial pressure then could damage surrounding tissues as well. So it may protect the vessels, but it may damage gray matter or other tissues. It's so sensitive in there.
Yeah. Lots to study.
So you're trying to protect one thing. Maybe you can use those maneuvers in exercise in order to protect your vessels. So we could say to powerlifting athletes, yes, do that because you're protecting your skull, but maybe you're protecting just your vessels and not the gray matter, and maybe neurodegenerative diseases are inevitable after prolonged pressures and prolonged weightlifting and supraphysial blood pressures like 350, 400. All those have been recorded.
We're just about out of time. Thank you,
Thank you
Panos, for coming in and telling us
much.
about it. Obviously, something you're very passionate about, and lots and lots of work to do. Lots you are doing, and lots of opening lots of ideas for other people to do as well.
Exactly. Thank
Cool.
you very much for your time.
Thank you, and thank you everyone out there for listening. We'll catch you again next time. You've been listening to the Science Notes podcast, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. To listen again, or to find other episodes in this series, go to Otago Access Radio's website, oar.org.nz, or to your favourite podcast platform.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.